when we start investing, our goal is always ROI, right? Oh, what is my return on investment? At some stage in life where we get to where, I always figure out, okay, there is ROI, but what is ROT, my return on time? And what kind of impact am I making through this investment?
You're listening to the Real Returns podcast, where we learn how real investments can make a real impact. Join your hosts, Andrew and Dan, as they share stories and interview business leaders on how real estate and other forms of investment can create meaningful change for individuals and communities around the world.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Real Returns podcast. I am your host, Andrew Reichert. I'm joined with my co-host, Dan the Man Croce. Dan, what's happening over there today?
Oh man, Andrew, it's an eventful week. We are chatting here. It's the second week of March right now, and I'm doing well. But you know who's not doing well right now?
No, who's that?
Our friend, the stock market.
Yes.
Having a heck of a couple weeks here. And I'm excited that our guest, Alpesh, today, he's actually a broad investor. I like to dabble in some other forms of investing outside of real estate. And, S&P 500 has had a great run the last few years. And I've been doing some thinking, saying, all right, well, how can I take some gains off the table and get into some of the small caps? I've been, really heavily indexed in these big tech stocks. So I'm doing research on the internet, saying, what's the best way to pick a small cap fund manager? And you know what I found? The advice the internet gave me?
No, what'd you find out?
Find a really horrible large cap manager and just wait. Right. You wait long enough, all those large caps will turn into small caps, and then you'll have a portfolio of small caps. So that's my strategy. I'm looking if anybody has any recommendations for me. There is your finance dad joke of the week.
So. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm such a bad manager of stocks that when you said large caps and small caps, I thought you were talking about like type fonts, like getting caps lock off on my laptop. So what do I know? But I'm glad that we've got somebody on the show that knows more than me about that stuff. So super excited to have Alpesh Parmar with us. He's an entrepreneur, an investor, and an author. He likes to invest in mobile home parks and senior housing. So we kind of get each other from a real estate investing standpoint. He also runs an IT consulting business. He's co-authored Growing the Money Tree for Kids, so a book introducing children to money and investing, which is one of my favorite things to talk about, as I have 3 young daughters that I'm always trying to get educated on that kind of stuff as well. So excited that you're here, Alpesh. If you wouldn't mind, would you just maybe more formally introduce yourself and tell us how did you even get into this stuff?
Absolutely. So I, of course, come from IT background. I had nothing to do with real estate or investment or stocks, but I got laid off back in 2009, the last recession we saw, and looks like we may have another one coming soon. So, because it's about time. I know it's not a laughing matter, but it's about time, right?
Yeah.
So during that recession, I was laid off from my job, and I realized that I had nothing to fall back upon. Right. I had no clue about, passive income or another stream of income, now that we always talk about multiple streams of income, but I had no clue. So it took me about a couple of years to get going. In 2011, I basically started investing in real estate, single family. That's how most of us start, right? A small single family here and there. Learned the ropes till 2015. And then I said, okay, I just need to start buying more. So pretty much then I started buying out of state because I live in San Francisco Bay Area. Numbers don't work and everything's crazy expensive, right?
So true.
Why would I buy $1 million property and rent it for $3-4 grand when I can buy 10 properties out of state and basically make 10 grand a month, right? So that was the idea at that time. Of course, numbers don't work like that anymore, but that's what I started doing in 2015. I'm like, okay, I got to start. So long story short, I just invested in real estate, but I will also continue to dabble into a lot of other types of investments. And maybe because I didn't have background about investing, I was just going after shiny object, right? All of us do that, shiny object syndrome. And I realized that I think real estate is my calling. So
Yeah.
even right now, even though I invest in stocks and cryptos and private investments and gold and whatever, but more than 50% of my portfolio is real estate. So yeah, pretty much continued to invest. And then we had COVID, right? So COVID came. I was working from home, kids were at home, and they kept asking me about what I do because I was mostly on calls, but I was also playing with them half of the day because, of course, we had real estate and stuff. So I had a lot of freedom of time. Not that I was not working, but I was working on my terms. So they kept asking me how I make money because, they were like, my friends, they always complain that, my dad doesn't work, play with us. He's always glued to his screen and whatnot. So I started talking to them about money, and that is how we ended up writing this book, Growing the Money Tree for Kids.
So cool. What a neat story. And as Andrew mentioned, it's something that he and I are both passionate about, both of us with young kids that are starting to be at that age where they get some curiosity
Yes.
about things like that in the world. So I'd love to dig into that eventually. But can you tell us just a little bit more specifically about, we have a audience that generally is real estate focused. So for you, that initial kind of entry point of having that realization that you wanted to be in the real estate space, and then, doing your preliminary research, ultimately making some decisions and pulling the trigger. What did that look like for you? How did you find assets? Were you partnering with, on the ground operators? Were you hiring property management companies? Were you leveraging? Just, I don't know, give us a little bit of kind of the nuts and bolts of what it looked like for you to practically become a real estate investor in markets that were not where you were based.
Sure. No, that's a great question. And a lot of people ask me as well. So I'm a risk taker, right? So not everyone is. So I always, and people who go after shiny objects, they are, because they are always trying things out. So, there are some people who are tire kickers, right? They analyze and analyze and analyze, and they don't end up doing anything, right? And there is the other side, which, people like me, which is not good either. So what I did that I started talking to friends, people who I thought were ahead of me in the game, and I started asking them, what do they do, right, for this multiple streams of income and whatnot? And everyone kept telling me, yeah, real estate is one really good way to park your money, let it grow, and not have to worry about it. Like stock market, where we just spoke about it, right, where you have to every day look at it, right? You are always thinking, oh, what happened, right? Because it's an emotional ride, and that's why I stopped investing in stocks for literally 3 4 years. I was like, I don't want to be stuck to this screen, and always thinking about stocks. But going back to your question, once I connected with a lot of people, I found out there are turnkey providers. They buy the property for you and they rent it out for you. So that's how I started back in 2015 buying properties in Midwest, Wisconsin and Iowa mostly, through the same turnkey provider. So I did that for a couple of years, and I'm like, okay, now I think I can do this myself. I have built the team. I can find the property myself. So then we started buying little larger properties. And when I say we, I also then had a partner join me on a couple of properties. So we bought a 9 unit property here in California, and then I bought one 9 unit property in Birmingham, Alabama, which I still own. I bought it in 2017, and it's still doing well. So I just continued to pretty much find people. And the goal, and there are a lot of goals, and I love your podcast. Like there are a lot of other podcasts like yours as well. People can learn so much, but also you can network with people, right? So you can, connect with people through your YouTube and email or newsletter, etc. So I started attending a lot of conferences once I realized that, okay, I can meet people, find like-minded people, build my network, build my team, and just continue to grow. And then for about last 5 years or so, mostly I have been dabbling in syndications because now I have found the partners I really wanted to work with. So instead of me trying to buy 10 properties a year to make my numbers work, I decide, I buy basically a couple of properties, but now I'm able to focus on those couple of properties, do thorough due diligence. I have partners, and all of us, get together and build a team to operate that property.
Cool. It makes a ton of sense. Something I've been curious to learn from people that have done that. I think I foolishly did a lot of this stuff myself. And then before too much time passed, thank my
Yes.
lucky stars, I found Andrew, who had a machine to deal with all the challenges of operating real
Yes.
estate. But good for you that you were able to, from the get-go, find partners that could, alleviate some of the stressors of being a real estate investor. But tell us a little bit. We have a theme here on the podcast where we think about impact. So, impact to the world around us, and not just the ROI on a dollar invested, but the ROI on the lives of the people that we're touching base with and the communities that we're interacting with. So, how have you thought about that as you've moved through your career? And we'll get to the book. I want to hear for sure about how the book is a channel of impact for you. But in the real estate itself, in the execution of your investing strategy and doing so from a distance, how have you thought about, trying to be a good citizen and make the right kind of impact with your investing?
Before I answer that, I appreciate what you guys are doing, and you always talk about impact. And I think that is very important in our world. When we start investing, our goal is always ROI, right? Oh, what is my return on investment? At some stage in life where we get to where, I always figure out, okay, there is ROI, but what is ROT, my return on time? And what kind of impact am I making through this investment? So now I don't even, when I buy stocks, I don't buy cannabis stock. I don't put my money in, alcohol stocks because I don't believe in it. I don't drink it. I don't take it. I'm not going to invest my money into something which I don't believe in. Yeah, I know
Mhm.
it can make a lot of money, but it's not for me. So same thing applies to my real estate investments. Before it was all about, find a property, slumlord type, basic, because I didn't care, my property manager would. Now the goal is to find a property in the area where, of course, the property will grow, but also we impact other people's lives, right? So one example or story that stands out was a mobile home park we acquired back in 2020 that was in disrepair and had been neglected for years. Many residents were struggling with basic infrastructure issues, unsafe roads, So we invested in upgrading the utilities, repaving roads, adding a community center even. The transformation not only improved the residents' quality of life, but also fostered a sense of pride and community ownership, right? And now, because we turned it around, of course, we had to kick some bad eggs out, but everyone who were there, they loved it, right? They still, we have some residents, they are there since we acquired about, I would say, 75% residents are still there. We have, of course, raised the rents to cover all that, but the mobile home park is amazing. And we just, even at this interest rate, we just refinanced it and returned entire investor capital as well. So we increased the
Mm.
value of the park, but we also improved everyone's lives. So yeah,
Amazing.
that's has been always the goal now.
Love stories like that. It's very possible, it's very
It
possible to
is.
to do both with kind of the right balanced approach. And from what I've learned about mobile home park investing, I think there's a lot of times some low-hanging fruit to make those kinds of common area improvements that have been neglected for so long, that I
Yeah.
think there's a very natural ways to improve a community and improve a sense of pride within a community. So kudos to you for executing
Thank
on
you.
that. Love to
Thank
hear
you.
a story like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
another example which I remember was that, we had a lot of kids hanging around doing nothing. And we had a small park. We converted it into a basketball court. And
Mm.
now these kids are always playing there. And it's so much better than, them sitting and doing nothing. And so it's, I'm like, this is so much nicer seeing them play all the time.
Well, I love that example because, a lot of people talk about the real estate as a community, but what you're really doing there is you're helping to actually build and foster a sense of community
Yes.
among the folks there. I'd really be curious to hear, how do you do that from a practical standpoint? I mean, you've got the one basketball court example, but is there anything else you do to try to foster a sense of community in the mobile home parks where you invest?
So we have another RV park which we acquired a couple years ago, where we started doing like every weekend on Sundays we'll have breakfast together. We'll We'll bring breakfast so everyone is able to hang out and, and then events. If there is an event like Valentine's Day, right, we'll have some kind of structure where we'll say, oh, it's a potluck, event, right? Everyone brings something and we all of us hang out. Not, of course, I'm not there all the time, but, our property manager and the residents will hang out. So just trying to create sense of community, right? And then pride of ownership, right? So people who are living there, they also take pride now, and they are pretty much they become your community managers, right? Because they are always looking after a community as well.
So cool. I am curious to hear now a little bit about this book, Growing the Money Tree. So I'm going to assume that I haven't read it. I'm actually just learning about it. I'm going to assume that the thesis is not that money grows on trees and you're going to help us learn how to plant the money tree, right? So what is this book? Tell us. I learned a little bit about the genesis of it, because your dad and you wanted to invest into the next generation. So tell us about what's the book about? Where did the idea come from, and what are your hopes for it moving forward?
Sure. So first a joke, right? I wanted to make sure that my kids don't think that the way we are printing money, the money grows on trees. Right. So no, but the idea was that, and they were 7 and 10 when we started talking about this, money and stuff, right? So, and it's been so when I was talking to them about money, we started also playing games like Monopoly, and a lot of other similar games, Circle of Life, Payday, etc., to give them an idea of what's coming in life, right? Not to overwhelm them. And then they started being they started become interested more and more. So I started putting, more and more stuff in their, in their heads. And then what I would do is I would ask them, once I explained, let's say I started with stocks, right? I explained them, then I asked them to write that down in their own language. Because every time what happened is that, when we are talking, we come up with all the technical jargons and this and that. And not that I'm trying to say kids are dumb, but I had to dumb it down for them, right? But once they started putting those things in their own sentences, then own words, they started understanding more. So we ended up putting all that in a notebook. And then by the time we were done, like about 60 pages in, I was like, wow, this is becoming a book. We did not realize that we were writing a book. So not only it was a fun project because it allowed me to spend lots of quality time with my 2 daughters. And I know Andrew mentioned he has 3 daughters. So that was so much needed, especially during COVID time when all of us were going through so much stress, right? It was not about just money, but it was more about mental and physical health, right? Didn't want to get sick. We didn't want to get stressed out, depressed, staying indoors. California had lockdowns. Pretty much you couldn't go even out, right? So all of that helped me stay sane, right? And it helped my kids. So the book covers from stocks, real estate, cryptocurrencies, precious metals, government bonds, pretty much collectibles, right? Because my kids were also interested. They're like, how do people make money when they say that I have a silver coin from 19 whatever, right? Now, right now, because that is how, the silver coin was real silver coin, the silver dollar, I mean to say. And, it grows in value. So that silver dollar is worth now 20, $30. So we tried to cover all of that. I have spoken about options trading and futures trading, even though just to give them an idea. But the book pretty much has all those details and with examples and also the book has a game called Growing the Money Tree game, which the kids play in their class. So the premise is that kids are studying this in the school, which is what should happen, which does not, right, in real life. But the premise is that there are 2 girls, of course, and a teacher, Mr. Price, by the way, his name, right? So he's teaching about money, and the girls go back home and they talk to their dad, Aaron, which is named after me. And he's a real estate developer, so he teaches them about real estate.
Oh, well, that sounds amazing. I cannot wait to pick up a copy and read it to my girls. I feel like that's the exact kind of stuff that the younger generation needs. Frankly, that's the kind of stuff that I need to hear, as kinds of things that I wish they had taught in school when I was in school. So really love what you're doing. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff, Alpesh, that you're doing from an investing standpoint, but also from an education standpoint. That's about all the time we have for the formal interviews. So I'm going to jump in to what we call our lightning round. First thing I'd love to understand is, what would you consider your biggest win?
Biggest win is that example I gave you, right? That is when I realized that I can make impact in other people's lives while I am making money.
Mm.
That transforming the neglected mobile home park into a thriving community, that was the biggest win.
Yeah, that's so good. I love how you think about that in terms of thinking about your impact. How about a favorite movie of yours?
One of my favorites, I love watching movies, by the way. I'm a movie geek, but one of my favorite movies, It's a Wonderful Life. Because the film's themes of community, kindness, and the impact one person can have on other resonates deeply with me. So
Phew.
that was one of my top movies.
Yeah, powerful
Alpesh,
movie.
the star of that is the actor is James Stewart, and
Yes.
his hometown is the same as my hometown. And my hometown, when you're walking through all the crosswalks, it's his voice that comes over. And there's
Oh,
the
really?
James Stewart
Wow.
Museum in downtown, so holds a special
Okay.
place in my heart. That's a great one.
I got to
Good.
visit.
Yeah, Indiana, PA.
That's all there is in that town, unfortunately.
Oh, wow.
How about a favorite food of yours? What do you like to eat?
Mexican burritos, fajitas, you name it. I love Mexican food.
Good hearty filling food too.
Yes.
So what's the current growth edge of yours? Like, what's a way you're trying to grow yourself, develop personally or professionally?
So always learning and connecting with people. There is so much to learn out there. Every time I think that, oh, I know it all. There is always something new. So of course, listening to podcasts like yours, reading lots of books. I have a huge pile of books. I just love reading books actually, and that is why we ended up writing book. I'm like, and my kids love reading books as well. So if there is a book out there and if someone recommends, I'm going to go buy it for sure and try to read as much as possible.
Nice. Well, along those lines, what's a really good piece of A+ content or a really good book that you just finished that you recommend?
A plus, the really recent book was this one. It was actually Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. He's the CPA of Mr. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad fam. And I started following Tom Wheelwright about, I would say, 7-8 years ago. So real estate and stocks and all that are good. But now my focus has always been how to save money on taxes.
Oh yeah.
That is our biggest expense out of after mortgage. So, I'm always, when I'm investing or when I'm trying to sell an asset, I'm always thinking about what am I going to do? How am I going to write off this tax?
So good and so 100% true. All right. Last but not least, how can folks connect with you if they want to learn more about what you're up to? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Sure. My website for the book is www.moneytreebooks.com. You can connect with me there. We have YouTube channel. We have Instagram. So you are Growing the Money Tree Book is the handle. So please connect with me. I would love to connect with all of your listeners and subscribers.
Awesome. Well, Alpesh, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for sharing some of your insights and wisdom with us around impact in the mobile home park space, senior housing, and really with this book and the education that you do around financial education and literacy for children. Thank you to our listeners for listening in. I hope you got some value out of today, and we look forward to having you all join us next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Real Returns Podcast. We hope that you learned something new about how you can invest to make a lasting impact on those around you. Please be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you listen to your podcasts, leave us a review, and share about us on social media. We hope you will join us for our next episode, where we will be continuing the conversation around impactful real estate investing.